What it feels like to die. When asked about his thoughts on death, Woody Allen replied, "I'm not afraid of dying, I just don't want to be there when it happens." Perhaps this universal fear of death relates in a large part to fear of the unknown. But if the unknown could in some way be revealed, if we could find out what might exist beyond death's door, and how it felt, and how to get there, then much of the fear of death could be removed. People might feel more secure if there was a U-Haul truck following the funeral procession, carrying all the possessions with them to the afterlife, an idea dating back to ancient Egypt. The truth of the matter is that, barring a rapture, none of us will leave this world alive. Each will have their turn with death, which happens to be the most democratic event in history, whether we like it or not. Through the ages, man has predicted life after death, but only in the last 30 years has resuscitation become so efficient that a whole new populace has appeared to interrogate concerning death, its sensations, and its meaning. Most of these people represent the unexpected deaths, half of them responding to simple external heart compressions and mouth-to-mouth breathing, no instruments required. With these new techniques, it's not surprising that renewed interest in the death process has swept the nation, and our schools and colleges have now introduced more courses on death and dying than on sexuality. What does it feel like to die? Everyone wants to know, but no one wants to ask, and even fewer want to try it. Yet the answer is essential because it will affect each of us. Surprisingly, death survivors tell us that the moment of death is absolutely painless. Painless, nothing at all. No choking or smothering, nothing like that. Feels like fainting, they say, or like a missed heartbeat or a lost breath. Less than anesthesia for surgery. These uniform answers came from several hundred patients summarized in the first book, Beyond Death's Door. Most people are deathly afraid of dying and say, "Doctor, I'm afraid of dying," but I've never heard one of them say, "Doctor, I'm afraid of judgment," and judgment is the main concern of patients who have been there and return to tell about it. Among those 20 to 40, some say 60% of resuscitees who claim a spiritual experience, the experience of heaven or hell becomes so real that the victim is transfixed by every detail, recalling every sequence of every event. But contrary to the literature, as we shall emphasize again and again, these experiences are not all good experiences. While a positive case might say, "I'll never be afraid to die again. It was so beautiful there," the negative case might say, "I'm not dying. I'm afraid of it. It's returning to that awful place again." What about the 40 to 80% who report no experience? Often they have no clear-cut explanation, or else they don't want to talk about it. Of course, the absence of any experience might cause an assumption that death was oblivion, a void, and for some reason few of the patients seem to reach that conclusion. Since nearly 11 million people have already had near-death experiences, the cases are quite common. You may know of some among your own friends. If so, why not collect your own cases? Always make interviews as confidential as possible, preferably one-on-one, where there is no fear of being overheard or ridiculed. It is a very sensitive subject. Unfortunately, medical personnel in general are afraid of such interviews, leaving them to ministers and psychologists who don't see the patients until sometime later, after the resuscitation has been completed. And this is the very time when negative events are hidden in the closet with other skeletons. For some peculiar reason, medical people just don't want to be associated with spiritual matters. Maybe it's pride. Maybe they're afraid of criticism. Maybe it's too personal, making them vulnerable to their own spirituality or mortality. Many people feel uncomfortable discussing spiritual experiences. One of the publishing agents reviewing this present manuscript refused to read further because she quote, couldn't cope with such morbid subjects, too depressive, too discomforting, unquote. She said, as you would guess, personal problems surfaced, and a few minutes later she said, a friend of mine is dying in the hospital, and her doctor insists that she is denying her condition. Well, isn't that her right? Isn't it less painful to deny than to admit that you're dying? So why do you go to doctors and insist, why do you doctors insist on reminding people that they are dying when they don't want to know about it? A good point, but such objections remind me of the old expression, ignorance is bliss. On the other hand, most dying patients already know that they are dying, and most doctors actually try to avoid the dying patient as much as possible. The dying process represents a personal defeat to some doctors, while others continue to treat when there isn't any cure to be had. Some doctors doggedly keep their patients alive when they really know the situation is lost, only prolonging the misery while raising horrendous hospital bills and raising the specter of passive euthanasia.